Hello and welcome to another Left Wing Back podcast special with me, Kevin Regan. Today I'll be speaking to Daniel St. Ledger, who in the past few days has announced his retirement from inter-county football at the age of 30. We delve into the reasoning behind Daniel's decision to step away from county, and we also recall some very funny stories. Today's episode is sponsored kindly by the Back in Line Injury and Rehabilitation Clinic below in Clavan, Donegal, and of course the owner of that particular business is Mr. Paul Kelly, and I thank Paul for that, and I also thank him for his assistance in this programme. I'm going to call him the assistant producer, as one or two stories near the end, which are very funny, may or may not have been prompted by Paul. Take a listen to this. Daniel, great to have you on the Left Wing Back podcast. A big decision you've made in the last few days to step away from inter-county football with Carlow. You gave 13 years, I think, and it's not a decision you took lightly, I would say. How much thought have you put into this?
Probably about a year and a half, Kevin, to be honest with you. I was probably kind of humming and hawing after we went back to Division 4. I wasn't sure what was really happening, and I kind of said, look, Poacher is coming back, Carlow is coming back, and I said, give it one last rattle and go again, because I suppose I know it wouldn't be I'm not totally over the hill yet, but still it was a long old slog, it was whatever it was, 12 years before last, but I got a bit of a niggle just before the start of the league this year, and couldn't get myself back right, and I was into the team and out of the team and just not feeling myself totally, and obviously things weren't going great either with us, and I suppose after the highs of the previous couple of years, it was very hard to kind of stomach taking a backward step, but then look, it's definitely was something that was in my head, and when COVID took over, I was kind of worried, Jesus, how will I live without the routine and all that kind of stuff, but I think I've adapted fairly well, which is probably a good thing, because I know a lot of footballers will say, or hurlers, whatever it is, will say when they leave for the first few months, it's hard just to be away from the group and be away from the schedule, the gym sessions, the trainings, the matches in the weekend, the kind of regimented routine that we all do. But no, look, it's in a sense, it was kind of an easy decision, and I knew once that was the case, it was the right one. It was probably. I knew the time was there when I finally did pull the plug on it.
Yeah, well, you gave incredible service, first of all, and I have to congratulate you on that, because a lot of lads wouldn't stick through what you had to stick through, because there was a lot of bad before there was good. And the other thing I would say is that you're 30 heading for 31. It's still quite young, but it's a trend we're kind of seeing now with inter-county players, that they are stepping away that bit earlier. And what's your you've outlined some of those reasons, but is it more taxing on the body, do you think, that these days, obviously in comparison to maybe going back in time, like the demands of the player means that you kind of had to step away that bit earlier?
Yeah, possibly so. I'd probably say that there's more knowledge, and kind of what the training we're doing is probably more specific, and you're not really being flogged, and you're being very careful with before games and after games, not to be picking up injuries and different things. But so sometimes it's probably psychologically worse than physically. I actually feel pretty good after 3 months of COVID, because you've nothing else to do but train, so it was a ball's been forced to go out and run, but it's definitely more psychological. And maybe if my circumstances were different, and if I was living in Carlow possibly, the traveling just takes an enormous toll. It was so funny. I even moved. We're building in the Knoll at the moment, myself and Laura, and we were living in Saggart, and we've moved in with her parents for a while, and the Knoll to Saggart is about 40 minutes, and that extra 40 minutes at night, on a Tuesday, it meant you're getting home at 11:45 instead of 11 o'clock or whatever it is, so that extra bit of driving used to absolutely cripple me. And it's probably easier maybe when you're 24, 25 to do the drive, jump out and get onto training session, but that was something I found particularly hard this year, was just the constant driving, and probably what led to a couple of my injuries, just silly little soft tissue stuff, so it's I'd say it's definitely a trend insofar as probably players are putting more into themselves, even not being driven by managers or stuff, but even themselves, they want to be the absolute best they possibly can be, and they'll probably go to crazy lengths sometimes, but I think that's the name of the game, because the rewards are incredible. I've said this a couple of times over the years, but football has given me some of the best days and some of the best friends that I'll ever have, and I can see why someone would absolutely kill themselves to be in a county panel,
Absolutely. Well, look, you've mentioned some of those reasons, and I know you've one or two things going on as well. I'm not quite sure if you want to delve into that in detail or not, but I suppose it kind of was a factor in stepping away too.
Yeah, it was actually funny. I spent 5 days in Limerick Hospital. I've had a couple of seizures in the last 6 years, and I got a diagnosis of nocturnal epilepsy, which basically means you get seizures in your sleep. Now, I've only had two, but it was funny. I probably wasn't ever going to tell anyone, not tell anyone, but kind of not really put it out on the frequencies. But I was listening to your podcast with Simon in hospital, and I just found it so refreshing how honest Simon Ray, how honest he was, and talking about kind of the anxiety I had around football and stuff. And it gives you a little bit of strength to hear someone of his caliber who you think is unbelievably confident and everything is going great, that he has these things going on as well. And I suppose there's probably not many, there's not many people that don't have a whole heap of things going on. You're out in a pitch and you just see a lad missing a free, or you might see a lad making a mistake, and you mightn't realise how many other things are going on in his life. So look, yeah, it definitely didn't influence my decision to stop. It's not something that if I wanted to keep going, I could have definitely. But I had 5 days on my own in there, and I couldn't have visitors. And you probably have a huge time to think and reassess maybe where you're going with it and how things had been. And I think I was possibly turned into a bit of a negative influence as such, because I was always wondering, why aren't things as good as they had been? And maybe that's not fair on lads in a panel to be always picking out what's going wrong the whole time. And I could kind of feel that coming into myself, and I didn't like that side of me either, And I think you need to be to play with any county, but especially play with Division 4 county. You need to have a really, really positive outlook, and you need to be extremely resilient. And I think that positivity was possibly going away from me a little bit in the last year or two.
Right, yeah. And look, I admire you for actually speaking out about this as well. And I don't want to lead you down the garden path with that, but look, you've said it, I suppose. And just to back up what you're saying, you're absolutely 100%. Everyone does have that bit of a battle, be it mental or physical. And I suppose even from the mental side of things, then, like, there's so much sledging going on in the game, and there's lads calling other lads all sorts of shit, like, and it's something we kind of see. And I mean, I know there's no room for sentiment in a lot of ways, but sometimes, like, lads have to be careful, don't they? Because shit is going on in people's lives as well, and there's more to life than just football, like.
Absolutely. And look, I'd be no angel either, but I think there's a line to be drawn at a certain stage as well. But I suppose, like, Division 4 for whatever we had, 11 or 12 years of my career, and a lot of bad days. You certainly build up a certain amount of resilience to it. And I guess you've heard an awful lot of stuff, and there's probably been a lot of things said to you and said about you, and yourself now in Dr. Cullen, when there might have been too many people, and you'd hear every mistake you've made, you'd hear every comment from the stand. But over the last couple of days, some of the nice words I've got from players from other counties, from other clubs in Carlow, from supporters, it's kind of been humbling, really. And I suppose I've been lucky that I've never had such a severe event that it caused me like enough to be dropping off a panel or to have anything like that. But I suppose you just don't know what's going on in people's lives, and that's why probably the role of a manager nowadays is so important as well. Because if you don't know, how your players are outside of football, I don't think you're going to get anything back from them in football. And that's probably something that Carlow was incredible at, and probably doesn't get enough credit for, like how mindful he was of players, of their jobs, of their families. And that's probably why he got such success with us over the few years,
Yeah, and we'll come to that, I suppose, a little bit later on, if we may. But you mentioned some of the people that have been getting in touch. You even got a compliment from Ewan McKenna. I mean, I had to check twice there to make sure it was actually happening. So you must have done something right over the last 13 years.
I don't know. I didn't think anyone from Kildare liked us after a few years, but obviously, yeah, look, it was a lovely thing. The phone kind of exploded afterwards. He'd have a fair few more followers than I would know. But yeah, it was kind of it's funny when you see it, like, because I know myself, I didn't want to go into a big deal about it. Or I know if lads had released statements or these different things, I just didn't think was needed, really, because I have my own group of friends and family and previous managers and stuff who I'd have spoken to about this, and I just didn't think it was necessary. But then things kind of took off, and sure, yourself with social media, kind of exploded. But it's really humbling, I have to say, because for a lot of those 13 years, you're kind of not sure where you stand, and I know I'd have had a fair bit of self-doubt, with myself, and you know yourself, when things are going well, they're great, and then when things are bad, they can be really bad. And I remember in I think it was Anthony Rainbow's second year or first year, possibly 2013 or 14. We played, or 14, I think. We played Tipperary at home, and I got taken off at half time. And I remember going home, and I was in absolute bits. And I rang my dad, and I said, I'm finished. I'm done. That's it. I was disgusted. And I was actually, he won't like me saying this, but Paul Broderick got sent off after a few minutes. And I think I got left with two sweepers around me there around the centre forward spot. So thanks for that, Paul. But no, so I rang Dad and I said, Lad, I'm sick of it now, I'm gone. And Dad said, look, you weren't really playing well enough to be getting thick about this. You're not playing well enough to be pulling off panels. Put your head down, work harder, and get on with it. And I think that kind of grounding and that kind of support I had from family especially was really good, because I'd say at that time, like, I wasn't mature enough to kind of differentiate and see that and differentiate from a one-off reaction and an actual genuine emotion, and I suppose I'm really glad that I've had that there, because God knows, like, there's people that mightn't have the support of their family who just can make decisions on emotion sometimes after a match or after a bad game or whatever it is, so I've been extremely lucky with people I have behind me.
Yeah, and that's important. Family and friends and partners and all are just so important. Like, and you mentioned the self doubt and stuff. And again, similar to what I would have said to Simon, like, that never would have struck me at all. Like, I mean, when you guys were playing at minor level and you got to the Leinster final, I'm only a couple of years younger than you, and we were actually on the, what do you call it, under 16 county, the Great below you, that same year. We were looking up to you like gods. And I mean, talk about composure and everything. You looked like one of those confident players. You never seemed like a lad that would have had self doubt, and certainly didn't reflect so on your performances anyway.
Yeah, so it's funny. It probably only came maybe in later years, and when you hit the senior, I remember kind of that minor was just like a whirlwind of a time, and maybe you're kind of, the naivety of youth. You don't really know what it's like, because I suppose we were the first kind of Carlow team to have success in a long time, and everybody was so complimentary, and it was just a phenomenal time. And you probably don't know what it's like to be in a senior panel that isn't successful. And
and you were a captain as well. Just to add that in, actually, you were a captain that year with the minors.
Yeah, and a lot of the lads, like a lot of the core group that kind of have stayed playing, and we had a phenomenally good team and management. And Declan McGovern was an unbelievable manager. It was an awful pity he never got he never got to take Carlow seniors, because I think he would have been incredible. But it was I just remember getting, like, especially the first couple of league games, I'd be getting so worked up about not playing well, and you'd be nervous. And at that time I was playing kind of corner forward, and when you're playing inside, like, you might only get 4 touches in a game, so they have to be kind of perfect, or else you're not making an impact. Whereas out around the middle, you can kind of get your hands in some easy ball and kind of just do some simple things to get you going. But yeah, like, and you're definitely conscious of what's been said, and if you see something in a paper, or you'll always hear a comment here or there, and it's probably, you could hear 400 really nice things, but it's always the 10 bad things that will kind of stick in your craw a little bit, and kind of you'll hold on to. So, but look, I don't think, I'm not looking for pity or anything. I think every player has to deal with that, a little bit of self-doubt. And I think if you're totally confident in yourself, you're probably settled a little bit, and you're not working on it, So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but definitely you'd be so aware of kind of some of the commentary that will be out there, definitely.
That was some journey that year, Daniel. I mean, to take us all the way up to, I think it was Louth in the semi-final of that particular championship in minor, and Brendan obviously got sent off that day. It was subsequently overturned, but by God, that was one hell of a journey that year.
Yeah, it was incredible. I probably owe Brendan a few points, because I think I half started that row, and he was the one that got picked out. So I was thankful anyway that I didn't get sent off, but he was kind of scapegoated a bit. But yeah, that was incredible. It really was. Like, it was such a time to be around Carlow, and you'd be even floating in around the town, and lads would be saying best of luck to you and different things, and it was just, you'd be walking on air, like, you really would. And I suppose we were kind of, it's just the way it came. We just happened to have a good group of players all at once, like, and it's funny when I remember going back to the under 15 and meeting some of the lads for the first time. The first lad I sat beside was Shane Redmond. I was thinking, geez, he's the only Air Og lad now, or only non-Air Og lad here. So I'll sit beside another Culty lad, and it kind of just grew from there, And it's some incredible bonds, like, and still that group would be some of my best friends. Like, we really would have been so tight. And God, it was something special. Like I remember that Leinster final against Laois. Like that Laois team were absolutely incredible. Like they had some unbelievable players. I think John O'Loughlin, Donny Kingston, Conor Meredith, Zach Toohey. Like I mean, just to name a few. Like I mean, how many professional athletes do you have in there? Even that were over in Aussie Rules. Like it was a phenomenal game, and it probably one that kind of still wreck your head. I know there's 18 minutes of it on YouTube that I'd watch back regularly enough when you'd be bored and you'd just be, God, you'd be sick to the teeth. But it kind of, I suppose it started something for us, and it kind of showed how good things could get, and we were very lucky to have that, because if you never kind of experience some of the good days, it's very easy to get bogged down in all the bad. And I think that minor year definitely was something that I suppose helped me keep going possibly during the bad days, because I was aware that there was always something there. If we got things right, that we actually had the makings of a panel, So I suppose in a sense, like it was crucial to our development. I think that group's development, to have that, because it definitely brought us closer as a team, and that kind of that core unit kind of stuck together right up until this year,
Yeah, absolutely. It was the nucleus for the team for the last 13 years or whatever. But a very good Galway team who became All Ireland champions beat you in that quarter final. Paul Conroy, I think, was captain of that team. And the Great White Hope then was 3 years later, and Paddy's Day against Dublin, another one that probably gives you nightmares. But oh Jesus, I still think about that free myself near the end that Brendan definitely should have got. I'm sure you're in agreement with this. It was Stonewall.
I've had to learn not to blame referees too much now, because Turlow's ever setting a bad example for us. But no, to be honest with you, Kevin, that was a horrible day. In general, for me personally, it probably was a huge learning curve for me in my development, because I got sent off stupidly against Offaly. Dara Foley was getting bet up by 3 or 4 lads to go in and protect him. So I ended up getting the red and missed the day. I kind of got injured in the Offaly game anyway, so I probably would have missed the Dublin match. But that was one of the hardest things I've had to go through watching that, and I just felt so stupid, really, to be honest with you. I just felt ridiculous for being so immature to go up and be getting involved in stuff like that when we were winning the game against Offaly, and to miss out in that Dublin game was. Oh, it was awful, but the lads, like the performance that day was just incredible. Like I'll never forget the stand was absolutely rocking, and I think it just would have taken just one result like that to kind of start a whole new generation again. As I said with that minor team, that kind of getting to that Leinster final was like, if we'd won that, it would have been just incredible. And I think Carlow were crying out for a team to support, and I think you can see that in the last couple of years when things were going well, the support we had, but it was. God, it was such a hard thing to watch, because the performance that day was absolutely incredible. Like some unbelievable performances against probably the spine of the Dublin team at the moment. Like, I mean, you had Rory O'Carroll, James McCarthy, Dean Rock was playing, and sure God knows how many more. Like, so stuff like that kind of would keep the drive in you, because right, if we can compete with these lads, what's going wrong in the interim that these lads have won 8 All Irelands since and we haven't? That's kind of that would be a little bit frustrating, but. It was it was horrible to watch. I really hated every minute of it, to be honest.
Yeah, it would have been tough. All right, you mentioned you had the injury that possibly would have kept you out, but knowing you would have bandaged it up and probably chanced it anyway. I suppose you'd give out to play in a game like that, like.
Oh, absolutely. You'd have been doing whatever you possibly could, and it would have just been incredible just to be out there and try and help in some way, because you just feel absolutely useless. And I was just, when you're seeing it, I think we went a couple of points up at one stage and things were going nicely, and you're just praying to God they keep it going. You might get another game out of it, because it was absolutely sickening. And I think it probably did a good bit of growing up for me, and I needed it. I think I was probably childish enough and a bit immature, and probably after the minor I thought I could do whatever I liked, and I'd getting silly, sending off and getting frustrated and different things. So it probably, while it was a tough enough thing to put up with, it was probably something that I badly needed to kind of give me a kick in the arse and kind of just put it down to a life lesson and kind of grow up a small bit.
Yeah, and I suppose at the end of the day, you still were a kid, but it's mad because you were actually heading into your 3rd year as a Carlow senior footballer, despite the fact, a Carlow senior footballer, I should say, despite the fact that you're still under 21. So you went straight in, you hadn't time to adapt. If that was a Kilkenny hurl or whatever, you're not flung straight in. You're given possibly 22 or 23 before you play a game. But I suppose such was the talent of the side, you're thrown straight in. And I remember we'd been up in Crow Park. Meath was your first championship game, I think. You're in full forward, were you?
That's right. Yeah. It was.
I scored a point early on, and then you got absolutely trimmed.
Yeah, I think they bet us by about, it must have been 125-8 or something ridiculous. But yeah, that was a fair old eye opener. But it was my first day coming in. Actually, the lads drew with Dublin up in Parnell Park, and I got called in for the replay. And my mocks were starting the next day, and you could imagine now how that went down at home. But I just couldn't not go. The excitement, and it was all you ever wanted. Like, I mean, Christ, the buzz of getting a call from a county manager was just incredible. Like, I remember we were playing a hurling game with Punchlody at the time of school now, and I wouldn't be a fantastic hurler, but I remember coming in and the looking at the phone and just seeing this missed call from his number and a message from Paul Beelan, and I remember being absolutely buzzing. And I always wondered afterwards, like, why isn't that excitement there for people who just don't want it? Don't come in, don't answer the call for the county. For me anyway, it just was an absolute no-brainer. And we actually, for the first game we played in the league was down in Clare, and I was talking to Brian Carvey there on Twitter. He's the first lad to sit beside me in the bus, and I was petrified to talk to him. I didn't know what to say. I just kind of sat really quietly and hoping no one would pick me out. But that was so that first game was down in Clare, and we were meant to play Offaly the following week, and we were meant to be hurling against a good council, I think, on the Saturday. And I remember Paul Peelan and Rory Kinsella, who had trained Wexford at the time, he was our hurling trainer, having a huge barney on the phone, and I wanted to play the football. I had no interest in the hurling, but I ended up having to hurl anyway, and I didn't do a whole lot of it either. But I remember just football just took over, completely consumed me, and it was a fantastic time. Like, it was really special to be. I suppose maybe my mum and dad might say it probably took the eye off the ball a small bit with the old studies, but it was an incredible start to a county career.
Surely was. And I'm just thinking back to the standout days. Loud in 2011. Stephen Barwick, of course, who we had on the podcast last week, one of the most entertaining men on Twitter. I think he said I should call this podcast episode My Right Foot or something. Foot like an anvil. But I actually remember that free going over, and that was that the post back level before Brendan kicked the winner?
Yeah, that's right. It was funny because I missed one from closer in about 5 minutes beforehand, and it's funny actually that the change in kind of maybe mindset in county football in general, like, because if that was now after missing the first one, you'd have been going short, or you'd have been trying to work it closer for a free. But again, there was probably a little bit of innocence and naivety back then still, but it hadn't really gone to that really cynical nature, and it was a few yards further out, and so I said I'll have a whack at it. But and then Brendan got the 3 points to or the point in the end to finish it up with 3 overall. But that was some day. Like, that really was, because it kind of came out of the blue to a certain degree. Like, we did an all right league, but Jesus, the outpouring of emotion. And Carpenter's that night, I think Carpenter had to get about 3 or 4 new TVs. The place was absolutely left in a mess. There was all sorts of stuff on the walls, but it was it was a brilliant time. Like, and it was probably, as I said, it was still before GA went totally the other way for us anyway. There was still a certain innocence about it, like, and a good innocence in a sense. I think possibly something that we kind of might need to get back to a little bit, away from the regimented kind of professionalism, let's say. But we definitely enjoyed that night or two afterwards anyway. But then I think it was Wexford gave us an awful trim in the semi-final, which was kind of frustrating, because you're thinking, right, that's just a one-off. It wasn't a process that you've been building to and working to a system. It was just a great day that you have to appreciate for what it is as well,
Yeah, and you made a great start. You kicked a kind of a carbon copy almost of that score in Portlaoise, I remember, under the Hogan stand in Croker as well. And they go in for piss easy goals then, and sure, that was the end of that. But like, what was the build up like to it? You were right down there beside Wexford. That would have been tasty enough.
Yeah, it was great. It was good. Like, there was there's always a bit of crack with the Wexford lads. Anytime you go into the golf club in Bunclody, there's always a bit of back and forth, But it was incredible to be back in Croke Park again. But probably after the minor thing, Croke Park kind of it wore off a little bit to a certain degree. It was like, no big deal. You're back. You're playing another match. It's not a huge thing, but it's a special thing to have to say you've done it, But that was really frustrating, that game, because it just, it just really felt like, look, we have ourselves set up here to kind of really push on and make a bit of a name for ourselves. But we kind of, relapsed back into old habits, and in the end, it was just a complete false dawn, really, because I think, I don't know if we were correctly ready to take the next step, to really become kind of more competitive with teams at a higher level. But look, again, it was a learning experience. It was you put it down to just building a bit of resilience, building your reservoir of kind of information you have of do's and don'ts, and there's a few don'ts in that game, unfortunately. But again, look, a phenomenal experience, and definitely something we all took a good bit from, I think.
Yeah, the Meath game the following year, you drew with them. JJ, I think, got a last-minute goal. And then you had severe hamstring trouble, actually. I don't know if that was the same injury that was kind of at you before that 21s game with Dublin, but you did well to actually kind of overturn that injury, because that's not an easy one to deal with, and I'm sure you had to work hard at kind of keeping it at bay.
Yeah, I would have had, and probably this is kind of what I was coming back to with, let's say, it took me a while to grow up a little bit and kind of mature a bit, because again, after the minor years, you when you're 18 or 19, you can eat what you want, you can do what you want, you can, there wasn't really any S&C as such, that wasn't really a thing. So you were just kind of going out and playing, there was no kind of dynamic warm-ups or any of that kind of jazz, so it was something I needed to get right, because I wouldn't be naturally the most athletic person. It's something I'd have to work extremely hard on, and to try and even just get anywhere close to passable, it just wouldn't be the part of my game that I'd be dependent on ever, really, So, it kind of took me till about maybe 23-ish after college kind of finished up and stuff to really take strength and conditioning a little bit more seriously, and not from the point of view of getting yourself big and muscly as you can, but from the point of view of just getting yourself on the pitch as much as possible. And I remember that used to wreck my head that I'd never finished a full league campaign at all. I think it was maybe 2014 or something like that before I actually completed a full 7 games or 8 games, whatever it was, with Kilkenny in it back then. And that used to drive me insane, that I'd have maybe 2 games, get injured, and that'd be it then until championship, So I think then once I got that kind of side of things right, I managed to kind of keep myself on the field for a fair bit of the following few years. But it's something that, and people probably don't give enough emphasis when you think you're going to the gym. It's just to be lifting and doing different things, but it's nearly just keeping yourself on the field, and injury prevention is absolutely critical. And it just wasn't really a thing, until maybe 2013, 2012, something like that. Maybe it started to take off a small bit, and then it probably takes you 2 or 3 years to really get yourself to a level where you can take maybe 4 or 5 games week in, week out, take 2 or 3 sessions on top of that, because it definitely is attritional in the winter months,
Is there any great secret to actually keeping yourself right? Because obviously you had to do something different to keep the injuries at bay. Exactly, in specific, I suppose. I know you mentioned the gym, but what specifically kind of are you looking at? Is it flexibility stuff? What are you looking at there?
Yeah, it's probably more flexibility stuff more than anything else, really. And we've had lots of really good S&C fellas over the last. Damien Sheen, and we had Wayne Middleton to start, and Kieran last year kind of has taken over now. Just kind of keeping yourself as limber as possible. It all seems to stem from the hips from my point of view anyway. So it's just small little kind of corrective exercises and bits and pieces like that you kind of have to be doing most days just to get yourself right. And in fairness, again, that's not anything unique to me or anything. If you go into a dressing room now before go up to Fen on a Tuesday night, you'll see lads doing all sorts of little individual things that they need to have done to actually get out and train, to ensure that they can go on for, as I say, a full session on a Tuesday night, full session on a Friday, and a match on a Sunday, and be able to repeat that week in, week out. And that's, again, just comes from knowing your own body. So as you said, hamstrings were probably at the start my Achilles heel, in a sense. But so that was something that I had to get right, and I had my own specific little bits and pieces for that. For someone else, it could have been quads. For someone else, it could have been calves. So it's just probably consistency of keeping yourself as loose as possible. And if that means you don't necessarily have to be in a gym to do that. If it's just 10 minutes at home, just trying to open out and do a bit of stretching or whatever it is, that's probably what you need to do. But definitely the driving doesn't help things at all. Anyone that's doing M50 or M7 when it was in the roadworks or anything like that, they definitely have to do a little bit extra to get themselves right. We'd have I know I'd always try to get down an hour before training because I'd need it just to be loose, because you're going out like a plank if it was 7:15 and you were running out in the field just going straight into it. Like I remember Kieran Moore used to manage to come down at 25 past. He'd be ready to go at 28 minutes past and still manage to get out, and he'd be flying around in the train station, But I suppose Moore is a bit of a freak, but it's just getting to know your body, and that you probably only get to know that after a couple of years of different things happening, of injuries, of whatever it is. So it's as I said, it's flexibility is probably the big thing. I'm big and bold enough as it is, so I don't need to be lifting a whole lot, but it's just trying to keep yourself as limber as possible.
One of the kind of standout moments off the pitch was the fight night you had over in the Dolman back in it must have been the end of 2011. That was quite entertaining, and I think there was a lot of money made that night as well. There was a bookies thing set up, and the odds are absolutely ridiculous. You boxed the horse that night, I think, did you?
I did. He has my nose still kind of crooked after that. It was, that was chronic. I absolutely emptied myself for the first round. And as I said earlier, the conditioning mightn't have been great at that time of year either. So I had nothing in the tank for the third round. I just wanted it to be over as quick as I could. But it was, that was really good crack. That was Anthony Rainbow's first year. And it was really, really enjoyable. And I think they made huge amounts of money. But I always remember I think it was Brian Murphy and Derek Hayden was the big prize, the heavyweight fight at the end of the night. And
it was a good fight, actually.
Absolutely demented. Yeah. It was, yeah. It was, yeah. They had, they absolutely went at it. But Brian was a real brawler, and I think Derek was picking him off with little shots here and there. But I think I remember Alan Kelly, the Briar, was over there, and he had a few vodka and lemons, and he was throwing them in the air, and Murphy didn't get the decisions,
He's known to throw an tantrum, Briar, I suppose. He's called Briar for a reason. Another good servant, in fairness. He was there with you for a long time, wasn't he?
Oh, listen, such a good character. Like, if you ever wanted to go for a pint with a lad, or have a few laughs, like he's just something else. And to be honest, he was actually a huge loss when he left the panel, because he's just I know he'd have his moments like of he'd be throwing the strops, but he's just such a good servant, and he's fantastic to have around the panel. Like, the back of the bus when he left wasn't quite the same. If you're going down to Waterford or Leitrim or whoever, and the stories that he'd have. Lads tonight, he's such a good character, and lads like him you'd probably really miss when you go away from it,
Absolutely. And I suppose a lot of lads have Benny Kavanagh is another one who stepped away before I got this podcast going, but another guy as well who incredible, like there as long as you were, I'd say.
Yeah, and that's why I'm kind of feeling, I don't know, a little bit awkward about kind of how nice people have been and stuff, because like there's been so many people that have soldiered and got nothing and got nowhere. And, I'm just blessed that I had such a good group of lads that all came around at the same time as me, and blessed that we had management like we had for most of my career with Carlow and Poacher. It was so lucky, because there's so many fellas that might have missed out on that, that might have retired a couple of years earlier and maybe never had the plaudits or those days, So that's why it doesn't sit fantastically well with me, because I'm aware that I'm a very small part of a huge wheel of lads that have given unbelievable service. Like, it's got better definitely since I've been around. The conditions have got better, we've expenses, your food and gear and all that stuff. Like, go back maybe 16, 17, 18 years ago, when, as I said, with Paul Kelly's kind of time, it's a different story, and it might have been an awful lot harder to play intercounty football, because everyone says, it's a real, 13 years is an awful, how did you manage it at all? But to be honest, like there was no managing to it. Like yes, there was down times and it was tough times, but it's still, the positives kind of were far outweighing the negatives,
Yeah, and those positive times came when you mentioned Poacher and Carlow came in. Carlow is, such a good guy, because I would be very good friends with Carlow, the same as you would, like, and he's just, you'd be over and back talking about Yorks there. And the same with Tom Wogan, another man I have fierce time for, and we'll be talking to regularly about different things and stuff. But the boys coming in and bringing in Poacher as well, like that's three great characters in their own different way, very different, but very, very good characters nonetheless. Like,
listen, I don't think as a group of players we probably will ever know how lucky we are to have those lads. Like, and even from the county board's point of view, to have those three fellas, like, like volunteers doesn't even do it service. Like, I mean, I know Turlow and Tommy wouldn't have even ever gotten an expense sheet. Like, it's just such good Carlow people. And it's so hard. It's so hard given like the resources that Carlow would have to be trying to attract managers and trying to get big names and different things. But like, we were just so lucky that group all came at one time, pretty much, and Carlow just to the absolute core. And even Poacher, in fairness to him, like, I don't think anyone could deny that he was in it for the right reasons. Like, it wasn't for making his few bucks at the end of it or anything like that. I mean, he to train us, it definitely cost him more than he was getting, in expenses or whatever, because like the hours that those men put in, traveling up and down the country and going to games, like Turlow would be going to ridiculous games. Self and Tommy would be taking off there in the white van. They could end up anywhere in the country. Like, they were such good characters, and they're the fellas that you'll really remember and that you'll really appreciate. Like, I know I got messages off Turlow and Tommy, and I swear to God, they bring a tear to your eye. Like, they're just such good people, and I cannot emphasize that enough. Like, they were just incredible, and I feel so lucky to have had them as a management team, because things could have been so much different without them.
Yeah, and they brought great change as well. You've seen that firsthand. What was different about what the lads did in comparison to previous management teams?
Well, it was kind of a step by step sort of thing, Kevin. Like, initially, when Carlow came in, I remember just the excitement and the buzz that he finally got the job. You see him up in the terrace there, and he'd be crocking out and giving out, and you'd know that he's just mad to get the job, for before he actually got it. And he came in halfway through 2014, and like, to be honest with you, things were absolutely abysmal. Like, probably as bad as they've ever been in there. And it's just the way it was. Like, and things weren't being done correctly, and the culture wasn't right, and the how players perceived the county wasn't right, and the respect wasn't probably being given to the jersey for whatever reason. And when the lads came in, when Carlow initially came in, like, just to get the lift initially of such a passionate Carlow fella was incredible, because we probably had outside managers all the way up nearly for me, so it was kind of a real novelty to have Carlow getting his rattle at it. And it was a step by step thing, and it definitely wasn't perfect. 2015, 2016, they weren't hectic, but again, we didn't have everyone we needed, and you're fighting an uphill battle in Carlow. It's already hard enough trying to split with the hurling and football, but when you don't have all the footballers you need, you're going up a hill totally, So it probably took Poacher to come in, and I remember in when was it, the 2016 November 2016, his first meeting, and in fairness to Turlow, like, to be able to recognise that this character was what we needed, and to be able to say, look, I need to focus on management, because God knows there's so much to it, and he needs to be able to take care of the football stuff. And I remember going into that meeting in 2016 November, it was actually, remember the All Blacks Ireland played over in Chicago. It was that night, and I was absolutely raging, because I was thinking, I won't be home watching this now, and I have to go into this meeting. And because 2016 didn't really end well, and for me personally, I didn't particularly enjoy 2016. I was playing a lonely role in the full back line, and you see me playing, Kevin, I wouldn't exactly be a man marker with a terrific pace or anything like that. So I really wasn't enjoying it, to be honest. And I remember going into the meeting thinking to myself, I had a list of things in my head that I was going to say and I was going to give out about this, that, and the other, And I went in, and Poacher just wasn't that many lads there initially. There might have only been 13 or 14 fellas. And I'd say Poacher thinking to himself, what am I after getting myself in for? But he had this little kind of a booklet done out for us about how we're going to play, what kickouts we were going to use. And he had the scores we conceded over the last couple of years in league games. And he said, this is the first thing we're going to sort out, lads. And it just, everything I was going to say, he said. And I remember coming home from that meeting being so invigorated and excited about what was coming. I was just like, we've been waiting for someone to do this for us, like, practically all my career. Like, as I said, the last person that really went into detail with this stuff was Declan McGovern back in minor, and now we finally have what we're looking for, I think. And I just remember being so excited for that year. And we only trained on Sunday mornings initially, just once a week on the field with Turlow and Poacher, and he was only coming down from down for that Sunday morning. And I just remember, I think it was 9 o'clock start, maybe, or something like that. And I normally hate mornings, waste of time, Sunday morning sessions for me. I enjoyed it so much. Like, you'd be absolutely buzzing going to training, because you're like, we're going to be doing stuff that's totally relevant to our game plan, to what we're doing, to our setup, our structure. We weren't going to, to the Curragh to run hills, or we weren't going to do 16Ks in the forest. Like, we were going to play football. And I think that gave everybody so much energy. And it's so much easier to go to the pitch when you're saying, right, we're going to be playing football here. We're going to actually be doing the sport that we want to do, not training for Olympics or whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? So and as a byproduct of that, you were getting more lads into the panel, and then you were actually getting more relevant training to what you were going to be playing, rather than training for a 5 kilometre test when is that necessary for a game as such? Obviously you have to have your base and all that kind of stuff, but you might only have 4 contact hours with your management team a week. You need to be working on your football, kickouts and defensive strategies, and I suppose the forward stuff kind of came a little bit later. But initially it was just such a buzz to be going to the sessions, and I just remember enjoying his trainings to a level that I've never enjoyed football before. It was incredible.
Yeah, he's great charisma. Is he your favourite for succeeding Carlow, or where do you see that going? Who would you like to see in there?
Look, to be honest with you, Kevin, I'm not being funny, but I don't really know. I've left the WhatsApp group. I know it's the famous thing, but so I don't really know what's happening at the moment. But I know. Look, I think he's the only person that's actually put up his hand and said that I want a job. If I was county board, I would be begging him to come back down. Absolutely begging him, because he can take us. He could take that group. Sorry, not us. He could take the lads to the next level if he got a chance, because he's just, you can see him, he's kind of developing as a coach as well. And I think if he had the show on his own with, obviously he'll bring in his own backroom team or whatever, or keep the lads that are there. I don't know what the plan is, but it'd just be so good for Carlow, because he's totally into it. Like, he's not doing it for the wrong reasons. And as I said, we don't exactly have a list of candidates lining up, so I mean, I'd just be absolutely going to him, and he has shown he has interest. So it's an absolute no-brainer for me. I just don't think you're going to do any better. Like, we're not in a position to be handing out 50 grand expenses to some James Horan or whoever, some big name. Like, we just can't afford that. So if you have this coach who's like clearly probably one of our most successful coaches of all time with Carlow, more or less, looking for the job, I think it's an absolute no-brainer.
Yeah, and I know Stevie fairly well. I get on with him as well, and I'm pretty sure he would acknowledge that working on the attacking aspect of that plan still needed that little bit of fine-tuning. And I'm sure, like, if he did come back, that would be a priority. Like, yeah,
I'd imagine so. Like, it's funny as well, right? Like, when you look at it in its totality, it's probably, when let's be realistic, every team has a level, okay, and at the moment our level is kind of between Division 3 and 4, up and down, sort of. But that'd be my opinion on it. And when we were playing teams at our level, let's say in 2018, when I think we were actually totally organised, because I think we took our eye off the ball 2019, if I'm being honest. But 2018, I think we were totally tuned into what we were doing. Everybody singing off the same hymn sheet, everybody working to the same plan, and we were putting up, I think, was it 22-point averages in games in Division 4. I mean, like, what is it, 2-14 against Kildare, 2-17 against Louth. Like, I couldn't care less how we do it. If you're putting up scores like that, I like have 15 behind the ball all day, but if you're still scoring that kind of stuff, fair enough. But I suppose what people will always remember is maybe the Dublin game and the Monaghan game against teams that are totally out of our league. Let's be realistic. We had to do whatever we had to do to try and be competitive, and I think he was clever enough. Like, we're not blessed with 15 forwards in the county to pick from, 15 Bernard Brogans or something. Do you know what I mean? We have to play with the hand we were dealt, and for whatever reason, we seem to have a heap of midfielders. Sort of like, there's probably half the forward line is all midfielders. Just the way it's kind of worked out, So you're kind of just trying your best to work with what you have, and like, I don't know. I think I can see him if he did get it. And as I said, I don't know what the crack is, but if he did get it, I could definitely see a movement towards trying to open that style of play a little bit more, But I think the problem in 2019, when things became a little bit stale, and last year, like, it was more so the energy was gone from us, and we probably weren't doing, as a group, we weren't following our roles the way we probably should have been, And I think we all probably have to take a little bit of responsibility for that. Like, I think we were a little bit lax even in the build up to Division 3. We probably didn't get as much work done as we liked. The Aerogue lads were away for a while, and like when that system that we were playing, that counter-attacking style, when that doesn't work, it looks absolutely atrocious. And probably we were figured out by a couple of teams, Longford and Laois especially. Like they just knew what to do and how to break it down. And that's probably the next phase that we need to move to. You still have a really good structure at the back and really well organised and tough tackling and all that kind of stuff, but you probably have to be a little bit more adaptable. And I think that'll be a big challenge for the next man, whoever it is that comes in, to try and to get the balance of both. Because there's no point just going out and say, oh, have a go, kick it in long, do not. What'll happen? What'll happen is what happened to Wexford last year in the league, where we conceded whatever it was, 2-15. And that's no good for anyone. You know what I mean? So you have to strike the balance in between. And look, I just hope the next manager, whoever it is able to find that balance. And, with the players that are there, like they're as good as is in Division 4 and could easily manage in Division 3, but they have to be put in such a way that they can play and to the best of their abilities. Play to the strengths that we have as much as is possible. And if you have a setup that doesn't suit the players that you have, but what's the point? Like, you have to do the best with who you have and the type of players you have. So look, it's definitely something that needs to be addressed, and kind of football is evolving at a phenomenal rate, but you have to strike the balance, and that'll probably be the toughest thing for whoever's in next, is to get that balance between being defensively sound but also having a little bit more creativity maybe.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly, lad. Come here, we have a quick fire round before we let you go to get there. I know club stuff is very much on the agenda as well, and promotion is back, so that's good news for Callavan Donegal, who are not too far off. Like, I suppose a lot of teams are in the same boat, but it's great that there's a bit of sense saw in all this. Like,
yeah, it was, and fair play to decision makers, whoever kind of pushed the idea as hard as they could to happen. Because you need that as well. You need the carrot, like, and especially for some of the older fellas, like who mightn't have a whole heap more years left. They might want a year at senior if they possibly could, because and intermediate's so bloody hard won at the best of times. Like, you'd say if you won intermediate, you want the reward of going up. So I suppose from that point of view, it's brilliant for the old lads like Paul Kelly, and these fellas that that need the incentive of one more year. But no, look, it's great, and I think the intermediate championship is probably one of the most competitive championships you're going to get. Like, it's absolutely it's dog eat dog stuff, and you really never appreciate it until you're down there and you're trying to get out of it. But no, there's a really good buzz now at the moment. They'll be keeping in touch with lads, and they're training away. So looking forward to September.
Yeah, and you're enjoying, I suppose, being back with Callavan, because you were with Sylvester's for a couple of years. Yeah,
no, I am, and look, it was something that happened, and maybe in hindsight, you'd have done things differently. But look, it's great being back with the lads at the moment, and there's a real buzz around Callavan at the moment. Like, there's a real effort being put into the underage, and there's loads of good people really trying to push it hard. And look, I kind of, nobody ever really fell out with me over moving away. And I know Christy Neil down the road, he was ringing my mum there when I was in hospital to make sure I was all right. Like, fellas like that are just genuine kind of real GA people, and it's actually been fantastic to be back with, and Pat Nolan at the helm. He's really kind of got a good bond with the lads. He'd be making sure that for every 25th and for every 50th birthday, we're all together and we're all having a few pints after matches and doing these different things. And it's kind of a real throwback to probably, what I'd imagine it would have been like to play in the 90s, where, you all went out as a group, all went out together, and you had your bit of crack, but you trained hard then on the Tuesday afterwards and stuff like that. So I have to say, I'm actually really looking forward to having a good crack at it again, because obviously, when you're playing whatever 6 or 7 or 8 months of the year with Carlow, you kind of, some of that energy will have gone away to a certain degree, So I'm really glad I can give something back to Kildavin, and I hope there's a couple of good more years left to me, please God, with them.
No doubt there is, Dan. Right, we have a quick fire round, and some of these have been prompted by a certain person, and not naming any names, but it might be Paul Kelly. He wants what's the story here? He says, ask him what it was like coming back from the county setup when Tommy Wogan was involved, and he got sick of club training.
Well, I think that was 2012 maybe, or no, 2010 I think we played Derry in a qualifier, and then we had to come back, and I hadn't, again, remember I was telling you earlier, used to be injured for 3/4 of the year and just get back to the championship game. So We lost the Derry in a qualifier anyway, and I think it was Derry anyway. And it was in Dr. Cullen, and then we came back, and he brought us up to Ballintemple Woods. And again, as I was saying to you earlier, I wouldn't exactly be Mo Farah or anything like that with their long distance running. So Tommy obviously knew what he was doing, so he put me in the real fast group, at the front. I think it was about a mile run. And I had never been down here before. I had no clue. So I had the breakfast going down, had a bit of Weetabix or whatever. And I was thinking, it's just to be grand, it'll only be a few sprints or whatever, no problem. Went down anyway, and sure, this run was I think it was about a mile anyway. The lads took off. I think it was Corwin and Dahin and someone else. I think Paul Kelly, actually, I don't know if he was even there. I think he was on the beer somewhere the night before. But anyway, irrelevant. But,
wouldn't be like him.
No. But, Jesus, this run took off anyway. I'd say I got 3/4 of the way through it. And I said to myself, here comes the Weetabix now anyway. So absolutely blew chunks down in Ballintemple somewhere. And I remember Tommy was cycling the bike up beside me, and I was trying to walk up to the top of the hill. But lads, he'll never let me forget that one. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. He also wants to know what happened to your suit on your first trip to the Galway races with the Kildavin senior footballers.
Right. Jeez, he's after pulling out a few beauties. This was part of that growing up thing I was talking about. Like, I was, I think I was 19ish or 18 maybe, I think. And we said we'd all go over to the Galway races for the day anyway. So all the boys were bringing the suits. So remember those the suits you used to wear to your debs, the black ones with the black shirt and the coloured tie. Whoever you were bringing was wearing the same dress, or whatever. So I had that suit on because we had a few pints the night before. I think we had championship match Friday. So we went over, and all the boys said, "Look, bring your suit." So I was half cut anyway, getting out, and threw the suit on me, heading for Galway, and went out to the car. 4 boys in the back of the car laughing at me, wearing shorts and flip flops. But I tell you, I didn't waste any time when I got to Galway getting dressed, though. I was ready to go.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Right, that's kind of, I just have one or two more to add in myself before we finish. Thought it was about Choo Choo when he came into the county scene. I'm told he was a breath of fresh air, turning up in the snow training sessions in t-shirts and driving in football boots and stuff.
Yeah. Well, first of all, no, he should be playing with Kildavin. Let's be realistic now. He's half Kildavin man, so he should be there with us. But listen, that lad is just, he's such a special character. Like, I mean, when he used to be coming close enough to 7:30, and all you hear is just rustling in the ditches and fenning, and he'd be jumping over after running down, and he'd have the old Michigan sweatshirt on him or something. Oh, Jesus Christ, he is something else. But he's another one of those fellas. He's kind of like an Alan Kelly of a fella who you just need around the panel, because even just away from the football stuff for a minute, he's such a nice fella. Like, he really and truly is, and you get such a laugh out of him. But he is something else. Like, I mean, he is unbelievable. Like, some of the yokes he used to be doing in training, like, I've never seen the like of it. He'd come out and he wouldn't even have warm up done. He'd be pulling off balls with drop kicks, and I'd be looking at him thinking every muscle in my body would be gone if I tried to do that the way he's doing it. But he was probably the catalyst, actually, in fairness to him, that we kind of needed for the way we were playing, because with that transition game you need just unbelievable pace around the middle, and as I said, some of us wouldn't exactly be lightning quick, so he got us out of a fair few holes. But listen, I hope he plays for Carlow for the next 10 years, because that fella is just he's pure gold right through, and he's a phenomenal athlete. I've never seen like him, but hopefully he's quite enough now to meet him in the Green Championship this year.
Did it piss you off a little bit when he got the Man of the Match award, and there was actually a couple of journalists saying that he was disingenuous for not doing an interview? Like, I know Choo Choo the same as you, and that's just not his thing. He wouldn't go in front of a camera. That was like ridiculous, I thought, at the time.
Sure, look, again, would you be too bothered with some journalist who's probably just the first time they've ever seen you playing ever? You know what I mean? So again, you kind of wouldn't take those notions really too seriously. But that would be Sean's idea of hell if he had to go on Sky Sports in front of a camera. Jesus Christ, the word even. Like, he'd be happier enough now going down the carpet and getting a few stout now. Never mind worrying about doing interviews. But no, listen, that was probably one thing that we had with that group, was because there was little bit of media stuff that kind of was going against us, here and there. And that kind of really galvanised things. And I used to drive Poacher wrong as well, and he'd be giving out about leash pundits and different things, whatever. But like that was a real kind of, it brought us together as a group, I think, when anyone used to get a bit of stick, that, we'd all kind of back in together and kind of galvanise us a little bit. So it was some achievement, though, to get a man of the match against a Dublin team like that, who they are. He was phenomenal that day. Like, and that just summed him up really. He's all action. He was going forward at one stage, and I remember him he must have made up about 300 yards on Dean Rock to make a block in the first half as well. Like, just our second half maybe, like, phenomenal stuff. But listen, a fantastic fella.
Absolutely. Right, the double barrel for the last one then. So I want the funniest moment with the Carlow senior footballers or whatever stage it was, and I want your best memory as well.
Funniest moment, Jesus, there's one now. I tell you, one of the good nights we one of the good nights we had. We were up in Johnstown House, and we're at a training camp, and Antrim happened to be there as well. So we played Antrim on the Saturday, and I think this was just before. God, I think it was before we played Wexford in 2017. I think. But we were playing the match anyway, and there was always a bit of cut in the practice matches. You know, Portugal used to love that, like having a bit of a schmozzle, so kind of everyone jumped in for each other. But there was holy war, and actually the very man Chuchu was stuck in the middle of it. But there was an absolute barney row in the middle of the field, and the referee abandoned the game. So everyone kind of calmed down anyway, went back, and we're all in the pool real sheepishly, kind of the Antrim lads one side, us on the other, and it was really awkward. But anyway, went back to the pub, and Turlough said, "Now lads, 2 points off the bed," you know. So you could see Poacher kind of drifting toward the bar slowly after he had the second, and you know, a third was coming, and then a fourth was coming, and he knew a couple of the Antrim management team and different things. And I kind of went off for about half an hour and came back down again, and Craig Carney was up singing all the Celtic songs in the middle of the table, going absolutely demented in the residence bar in Johnstown Bridge, and all the Antrim lads around him as well. And it was just a golden weekend. Like, it was some crack. And but just to see lads that were beating the heads off each other an hour earlier to be drinking together with arms around each other on tables was something else. There's a few people staying in the hotel, I'd say, they were wondering what is going on. But it was one of those really good bonding ones that we kind of, I think, was crucial to our whole thing. Like, it really got lads to know each other a bit better, you know. And
Yeah,
those
so
are then the best memory.
Yeah.
Best memory. You know, it's probably, I'd say, look, it'd have to be the day up in Antrim. We had kind of every year we had talked about Division 4, and it actually used to be really irritating every year, saying, right, let's out of Division 4 now. We're going to get out of Division 4. This year is going to be different, and you'd end up doing the exact same things that you did last year and wondering why you haven't won any games. And it used to be like mind-numbingly stupid, just going over it and over it and over it, doing nothing differently and still getting the same results. So to get out of Division 4 that day up in Antrim in Corrigan Park in the snow was one of the best feelings I've ever had. Like, and you can't. I'm not sure how you replicate that really. Like, you know, outside of obviously some big, you know, getting married or having kids or whatever. I don't know, but like, that was just a feeling I'll never forget. And the bus journey on the way home, like the crack we had, like pulling down the road to Poacher's house to get himself and Marie to come on the road down. And, you know, we stopped into an Apple Green on the way, and the place got absolutely raided. There was nothing left in the off license. Like, that journey home was just something special. And, you know, to see lads like from different clubs, just getting along so well, that would probably kill each other a few years previous in the club game, you know, that was one of the most special times that I've ever came across. And, you know, it's stuff like that'll stick in the memory. You know, it's funny, even before I kind of announced that I was finishing up, still kind of things would be annoying you, you'd be thinking of the negatives and different things. But when you actually stop and take stock of some of the good days, like, they'll be the ones that'll live with me. It won't be getting annoyed over tactics or getting annoyed over strategy. It'll be some of those days that we had as a group. Like, they were just so special. And, you know, it's, again, I'm just so privileged that I had such a good team and management team around at the same time that I was around to kind of to share it with. And only for that group, like, it wouldn't have happened, you know. And it was a special couple of years.
It was indeed. Well, listen, on behalf of the supporters in Carlow, I'd like to thank you for what you've given us on a personal level, and obviously your contribution to the team over the last 13 years. And then, obviously, for coming on the podcast as well. It's nice you to come on and be so open and honest and share some of those stories, and great for the people of Carlow to get the insight as well. So thanks for that. The very best luck. And, you know, look after yourself health-wise, most importantly, and then best luck on the field when you do get back there as well. If you can come off the golf course at some stage and stay away from the whole Guinness.
We'll see how they go. I'll give it a week anyway and see what happens. Thanks a million, Kevin. The podcast is brilliant as well. You're flying with it.
Yes, my thanks to Daniel for joining us on the podcast, and the very best luck once again. Thanks also to the Back in Line Injury and Rehabilitation Clinic below Clown Donegal. and to Paul, who of course acted, as I said, as assistant producer almost for this particular episode. We're back again with the final episode of the My Time in the Ganses series on Monday. Until then, take care.